Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Help Your NGO webinar on Decoding Impact Assessment for NGOs. My name is Tushar Himrajani, Senior Research Analyst at Help Your NGO. Now, before kickstarting the webinar, I would like to brief you all about us. Most of you already know that Help Your NGO is a one-stop shop for all individuals and companies to support vetted Indian NGOs. Since 2000, we have been helping donors make informed donation decisions. We are the only organization in India standardizing detailed financial and program information of over 700 NGOs across India, covering 13 causes and all of the 17 UN SDGs. Towards the right is the state and cause-wise breakup of our partner NGOs. In recent years, we have launched elegant tech-driven solutions designed to support the NGO's growth. I'll provide more details on this in the upcoming slides. Our aim is to increase transparency in the social sector and promote strategic philanthropy in India, thereby giving small NGOs the same visibility as the large ones. Here's the snapshot of an NGO profile page. We analyze their annual and audit reports along with their compliance documents to highlight the relevant information that donor needs to know. Our USP is the percentage spent on beneficiaries, which is the proportion of the direct program expenses to total expenditure. To give you an example, if someone donates 100 rupees to this NGO, 89 would directly benefit the end beneficiaries, while 11 rupees would be allocated to admin and other charges. Please note that this percentage is not a rating system and should not be implied that an NGO is good or bad. Mentioned here are some of our clients and partners. Moving on to our technology solutions. While we continue offering CSR consultancy, NGO due diligence, and proposal writing services, our efforts are now focused on scaling our tech solution product, which is HelpYourNGO. Now, based on our years of experience and interactions with the NGOs, we realize that one of the biggest challenges nonprofits face is raising funds to support their programs. This is exactly the problem that HelpYourNGO addresses. We'll be providing the links if you would like to know more about our products and services. While our work has been featured by various publications over the years, I'm happy to share that we have received coverage from two of India's leading publications, the Times of India and the Economic Times, on how HelpYourNGO can help NGOs in scaling and companies amplifying their CSR projects. Via our donor communities, we have supported NGO programs across rural and urban India, covering diverse causes such as education, menstrual hygiene management, livelihood, and many more. Thank you so much for patiently listening. I'm going to hand it over to Vinny Dolakia, Director at Help Your NGO, to kickstart the webinar.
Thanks for giving the audience a brief on Help Your NGO, Tushar. Now, without further ado, let's move on to the topic for today's webinar, which is Decoding Impact Assessment. Let me take this opportunity to welcome our first guest speaker, Preeti Cherian. With over 30 years of experience in governance, risk, and compliance, Preeti has collaborated with leading corporates, nonprofits, and listed companies, bringing exceptional value through her role at CNK. She's also on the managing committee of BCAS, where she spearheaded unique mentorship programs for deserving CAs. Welcome, Preeti. Our second guest speaker is Sarika Prasad, a chartered accountant with 2 decades of experience, who plays a key role at CNK's CSR and NPO advisory team. She collaborates with corporates and nonprofits to design and implement effective CSR initiatives. Her expertise spans governance frameworks, compliance management, and strategic advisory. So welcome, Sarika. We are delighted to have both of you with us today. We ran a poll among our NGO database to decide on the topic for this webinar, and impact assessment was a clear winner. So our audience has been eagerly waiting, and I think it's over to you now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vinny, for giving us this opportunity to speak to the audience. I I have seen the work that Help Your NGO does and very excited to collaborate with all of you. And yes, impact assessment is an animal which has entered the lives of nonprofits once CSR came into being. You know, corporates came with their checkbooks and so did certain rules, regulations. I don't need to tell nonprofits the kind of compliance that the nonprofit needs to demonstrate in addition to doing the various programs and the activities. And impact assessment also is a requirement which has come in. And many nonprofits do wonder, how do we tackle this? So we are looking at helping you. So at CNK, we do impact assessments for our clients. And we thought, why not speak to an audience and help them understand what is it that the assessor is looking at? What is it that you as part of the nonprofit need to probably be doing more so that your results of the impact assessment reflect the work and the dedication that your team has employed in completing the project and bringing it to its fruition. So we'll start with the presentation. So let's decode the impact assessment. What is it all about? So in terms of the agenda, what we thought was we start with understanding what does it mean, but I'll rush you through it because I think most of us who have come here have a fair idea of what impact assessment means. Why is it important? Who is it applicable to? What are the compliance requirements for that? How is it being done? What are the reporting requirements in place? And then, of course, Q&A. I believe some questions have already been taken at the time of registration, but we may have certain questions. Your team, I believe, will help us in understanding that, and we'll try and answer those as well. First, let's run a poll because while the registrations have come in, I think a lot of the people are at different stages. So if I would request everyone to please select the most relevant option. Are you someone who has done impact, who has been part of impact assessments, or are you someone, a few impact assessments here or there? You may also be someone who has been part of the assessor team or not been a party to this at all. So I guess the results show that none of the members who have, okay, we have one person who is part of the assessing team as well. That's great. So I think we can end the poll here. So not being a party to this at all, well, what can I say? There is a lot that awaits you in terms of what the impact assessment is all about. So let's go to the next slide where we take you through right from understanding where does the Companies Act requirement come in, where does the Social Stock Exchange requirement come in. But before we get into that, what is it? What is the whole purpose behind impact assessment? Now, corporates look at it as something which is required to be done for certain projects after a certain period. Really speaking, when you look at impact assessments, these are actually decision-making tools, because when you assess the project in detail, it actually gives you a fair idea in terms of how does it affect the people, how is this particular project affecting the environment and the other ecosystem around it. Also, it gives you a chance to rewrite policies, look at the project in detail, make those course corrections if required, and identify what would have happened if this particular activity had not been taken up. Would there be a difference at all, or would things be status quo, whether you did the activity or not? So that's where the impact assessment, really speaking, when we look at saying that an impact assessment of this project is being done, the idea is that we understand and take those steps and those measures which are being pointed out at the, at the reporting stage. So as far as the circular is concerned, it helps the companies to take more improved decisions in terms of where should they be spending, which project should they be spending, also seeing how the spend that they have done, how has it impacted the particular, the beneficiary pool that they have addressed. And also it gives them a feedback in terms of understanding how do we deploy our funds to a particular area, to a particular cause, and then how do we further make the best of this particular obligation that has been thrust upon us by the government. The social stock exchange has come into place, and the advantage when you have a social stock exchange, the advantage when you have certain guidance and framework is that there is a structured manner of looking at impact assessments, because while you may not be listed, while you may not have raised funds on the social stock exchange, the guidance helps you to follow a certain method for you as well as the assessor. So if you and the assessor come to an agreement that we should be looking at this particular standard and following it the way it is, or taking certain deviations which are agreed upon, what then happens is then when you go to another new funder, you are able to say that you have followed these guidelines. If I can draw an analogy here, it's like saying that I tell you, cook me a dish without giving you a recipe. You may decide to cook it the way you want to. The final product may not be what I expected it to be. But if I could give you a recipe and I tell you, follow this recipe, the chances that you produce a dish which is close to what I expected the chances are better. So similarly, when you follow a framework, you follow a guideline, it helps you to bring your impact assessment report to the measure that you would want it to. Because finally, as a nonprofit, you want the report to reflect positively on the work that has been done. In terms of the applicability of the impact assessment, we first start off with a poll to help us understand what your level of understanding is as far as who are the stakeholders as far as an impact assessment is concerned. So please select the most relevant option in your opinion. So A is the corporate fund providers or the beneficiaries, B being the NPOs, the trustees, the directors, C is the government regulators, third is the third-party agencies, intermediaries, and E is all of the above. So okay, I think we've got all the answers in. So here, what we see is that, yes, there are certain immediate stakeholders or direct stakeholders, but when you look at who are the stakeholders as far as an impact assessment is concerned, actually it is various parties. So whether it is someone who is providing resources to the intervention, or someone who's implementing that particular program or activity, someone who is providing the required registrations is also a stakeholder, and also someone who's affected by this particular intervention is also a stakeholder. So the correct answer actually is E. Because whether it is a corporate fund provider, the NPO itself, the trustees, the government, the regulators, the society, the various intermediaries who work on this, the vendors who work with the nonprofit, all are stakeholders in the impact assessment program, because wherever required, they would be approached by the assessor and run through, whether it is through a one-on-one interview or a focus group discussion, surveys, what have you. In terms of an exercise, if I would say that, okay, let's look at, say, a vocational training program which is being run for the youth. And who, in your opinion, are the 6 main direct and the indirect stakeholders. Looking at the previous slide, who would you say would be the stakeholder here? Of course, first would be the youth, because this is a program which is being done for the youth. And what is the interest that they have in the program? The interest is that it helps them to get better employment opportunities, right? That's the whole idea behind doing this vocational training. The funder is also an interested stakeholder because it helps them to achieve the goals that they have laid out for themselves. The government also is interested because through this program, it helps them to achieve the development goals that have been set up. The teachers, those trainers who are part of the vocational training, are also stakeholders, though indirect stakeholders, because here they get the satisfaction. They themselves are able to upgrade their skills. Companies also benefit because now they have a pool of trained youth who are employable. So a workforce which can be then employed. And then, of course, the parents and the families, because now they have children who are employable, who will be able to secure a job, who will be able to earn a livelihood and support the family. In terms of the Companies Act, there are certain requirements in terms of saying that a company where the total CSR obligation is 10 crore or more, and where projects are 1 crore or and above, only those are mandatorily required to undergo an impact assessment. So one is, the first limit is the 10 crore. So you may have a company which has projects above 1 crore, but the total obligation less than 10 crore, there wouldn't be a need for a mandatory impact assessment. So both these conditions need to be met for a mandatory impact assessment. Of course, there's nothing stopping corporates from taking up what is called voluntary basis, impact assessment on a voluntary basis. Having said that, I am also aware, as are you, that many corporates would prefer to be shy of the 1 crore limit, saying that we are ready to invest 95 lakhs so that we escape the whole need for an impact assessment. So in terms of the types of impact, you have the direct impact on a target community. So in this case, the example, if I can tell you, would be, say, the children undergoing FLN, so financial literacy and numeracy program, which is being run, say, by a non-profit. That here, the children are the key stakeholders. So what here happens is, you are looking at them, you're looking at what was the social intent behind this. So yes, to help children build on their skills to read, write, do simple basic math. And then you have, in that, the indicators are also very specific to the children, vis-a-vis something which is more systemic. And systemic impact in this case would be, say, where the teachers are being trained. So here the intervention would be focused on teacher training. But what happens because of this intervention and the teachers being trained to use, say, modern teaching tools, they would be able, the children who study under them would also be benefited by this. So then that becomes a systemic impact, and that impact would take some time, maybe a medium or a long-term time, to actually bear fruit. And here, in such cases, it is important to also see that what is the past performance trend of the nonprofit, because this is an impact which will actually show results over a period of time. When an impact is being assessed, one is, there may be certain impacts which are intended. So in the previous example where I said FLN, the intention was that the children are able to read, write, and perform simple math. So that's an intended impact of the program. And the measure, so all that you would be required to do is measure the extent. You would actually look at probably the results of the children and be able to say, yes, baseline study showed that students had got these scores and now they have improved. There could be some unintended impacts. Now, unintended was where it was not envisaged earlier. Now, there they could be both negative and positive. So unintended, of course, you will need to evaluate and see what was the reason. So say a positive impact may be that you find that because of this FLN intervention, you have now children who are interested in studies, they are more regular, there is an improvement in their attendance, there's an improvement in their understanding, doing further co-curricular activities, also the reduction in the dropouts. Now, all these would need to be tapped and identified by the nonprofit well in advance. So if you so that when the assessor comes at the year end, we are able to demonstrate that and show that yes, see, this is an impact which has also been brought about. If it's a negative impact, of course, there will be a need to look at the reason why there is a negative impact, whether there's a need to change certain things, whether there is a need to make certain corrections in the way the intervention is being delivered. So at various stakeholder levels, the importance and benefits of an impact assessment are, as far as the management of the nonprofit is concerned, it helps them to understand whether the project is being effectively being done, whether the target group, whether the beneficiary pool has been positively impacted by this particular intervention. Also look at the failures, if there are any, to be able to then also secure future funding, because that's the whole idea, being able to demonstrate the work that has been done and being able to further secure funding for other programs or the same program in the years ahead. As far as the organization is concerned, when an impact assessment is done, it calls for a lot of data to be managed. It calls for all data to be cleaned up and kept in a way that is required, which can be validated by an independent agency. So it helps build a very strong data management system. The organization is able to understand the trends, to look at long term, how has this particular project really affected the community that is being serviced, and also motivate, whether it is their own people, when they see a report which recognizes the efforts done by them. I think it's a huge morale boost. As far as donors and investors are concerned, they get the satisfaction that yes, all the targets that were identified have been achieved and the funds have been utilized. As far as the government is concerned, they are able to ensure that they are building a strong community and also ensuring that the national interest is being looked after. Now, this is the crux of this whole talk, where we are talking about how does this impact assessment, how does this whole engagement start? While this is from the assessor's perspective, I believe that it is the nonprofits also need to be equally invested. If I can draw an analogy here, it's like saying that I have studied for, I'm doing a course and I have a final exam coming up at the year end. I have to be prepared for it. Now, what is it that I need to study needs to be very clearly defined. How I will study needs to be clearly defined. I need to have that evidence to show in terms of that, yes, I have done what was required, and that will show in my reporting. But then first is that there are three parties who are part of an impact assessment. So let's look at who are the three parties that are part of the impact assessment. One is, of course, the person who's coming to assess your project. They could be an independent agency or they could be an in-house department. Having an in-house department means that the nonprofit is taking care to see that there are early alerts coming into the life of the project, and not waiting till the end of the project for a third party to come in and tell them what went wrong. As far as the responsible parties are concerned, yes, they are the ones who are actually delivering the particular project on the ground. Now, they may have engaged the impact assessor, so the nonprofit could have engaged the impact assessor, or they could have, the assessor may have been engaged by the donor or the corporate in this case. The intended user, who is the party for whom this report is being prepared? One, of course, you may have the corporate which has invested above a certain threshold. That's the report would be for them, but also then it would be used for getting in future donors, where you are able to show that yes, this is an impact assessment report which tells you about the work done by us and that we have been able to bring about a positive difference. In terms of the scope, again, a very important factor, because with the assessor, remember, is an outside party. So you got to be there to help them understand what is the scope required to be done, when will this impact assessment be done, how will it be done, what factors need to be considered, what are the preliminary documents that they need to look at, what kind of knowledge will they employ. These discussions need to be initiated with the assessor to first gauge whether they will be able to do the impact assessment, whether they are able to do it, or whether they need some help and some guidance. I think in all cases, or most cases, they would need that guidance, because who better than you for them to understand the beneficiary pool, the kind of work that has been done. And of course, if there is a need to make any changes, so those also would get reflected in the strategy that the assessor employs. In terms of the preliminary engagement activities, they would need to look at, the assessor would need to understand the entity in its whole, what kind of structure they have, who are the key managerial personnel, about the activity itself, which geographies does it work in, what are the kind of policies, procedures, the social objective, what is the framework which has been used, what do the baseline reports or the midline reports show, how has the fund utilization certificates, what do they reflect, who are the vendors, who are the third parties. So it gives them a fair idea of the entire program. In terms of framework, you could decide with the assessor what framework can be used. Typically, what you're looking at is to demonstrate that it covers all the people across, so everybody is able to get those benefits. It is relevant to the community that is being serviced. Also, the entire program has been delivered effectively. The relationship between various stakeholders also needs to be demonstrated. And of course, the ability, is there an exit strategy which has been identified? After you exit, will the community be able to take the ownership? Has it started taking ownership? And have you helped them to be able to run this activity, even if you as a nonprofit have stepped back? So that is basically the entire process, in terms of saying that, defining the scope and the objectives, identifying who are the stakeholders, what kind of data collection tools are being used, how is the sampling going to be done, discussions with the stakeholders, basis that discussion, the data which has come in, analyzing it, validating it, drafting the report, verification of the report, validation of all that is being commented upon in the report is an important factor. And then at the end of it, certifying the report. In terms of the data collection and the sampling tools, one is the secondary data, which is the data which is being maintained by the nonprofit. It could be data which is there in the public domain. So most of the impact assessment reports you will see will have a mention of, say, something which is being some national survey, or to be able to set a context to the entire program which is being done, or any kind of case study reports, or any documentation which is available with the nonprofit. Of course, any discrepancy will need to be further scrutinized by the assessor. Sampling strategy, very, very important. Spend time with your assessor to understand how are the samples being drawn, where are the samples being drawn from, because nobody understands you better than the beneficiaries better than you. So in terms of ensuring that the right sample size is being taken, what are the methodologies being used for identifying the sample. You may have something like a pan-India presence for your project. Certain states having greater, beneficiary pool in the total pool. So maybe a greater sample size being drawn from them. What kind of sampling methodologies are being used would also be taken up. Primary data is where the assessor gathers the data themselves, whether it is by consulting with the key stakeholders, conducting various interviews, questionnaires, focus group discussion surveys, using sampling techniques which are available, validating it, again, ensuring, looking at the audited financial statements, looking at the utilization statements, certificates which have also been audited. So as far as the data collection, I think we've already focused on this earlier, where we are saying that these are the various tools. Again, just one thing I would like to point out: when a structured checklist is being done, again, here the nonprofit should spend time in helping the assessor identify the right questions to be asked, because only then will the responses get reflected in the report. So take time in helping the assessor identify those, at least sign off and spend time with them on drawing up those structured checklists. In terms of the feedback, the assessor would look at talking to the stakeholders and understanding what was the situation before, what would have happened if this program had not been done, what kind of changes have they seen basis this program, what are the unintended impacts that they would have seen. And this entire data which comes in is discussed with the stakeholders also, so that a sign-off is taken and then it is presented. Wherever required, a consent also needs to be taken if a case study is being put in place. As far as a process of theory of change, if you're looking at doing it in a structured manner, we have put up an example where we say the problem is of malnutrition. And so you have, say, a health camp which is run for the children in the school. So what is the input here? The input is that the doctors and the medical staff spend time and efforts for this. The output being the number of children attending that camp. And what is the outcome of this? The outcome of running that camp is you find that the children are better informed as to what are the do's and don'ts as far as their health is concerned. And where is the impact seen in terms of improved parameters, health parameters, whether it is in terms of the body weight, the BMI, or say, for example, spectacle glasses being provided so that they are able to attend the class and understand the lessons being taught. Now, as far as the data which is concerned, what does the assessor do with the data? First and foremost, cleaning up of data is required, removing the duplicate entries is required, identifying how will the analysis being done, doing that linkage like we saw in the previous slide, using only verified data, analyzing it, comparing the actual results with the expected outcome or the baseline data, and then interpreting the results to after having identified whatever are the gaps. The digital tools are something that the assessor would typically use, given the fact that there is a lot of data that needs to be analyzed. So whether it is by using virtual meetings or doing some phone surveys for their interactions with the various stakeholders, or creating a database which captures details of various project sites, of the donors, of the stakeholders, and doing the analysis of all the data that has been gathered. In terms of presenting also reports, you do see a lot of infographics being used so that the message gets delivered very crisply. I now hand over the next part to my colleague, Sarika.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Now we are going to move on to the quality control aspect. Now, as Preeti mentioned, if you're going to have a party or if you're inviting some guests, right? So which recipe are you going to present to your guest? Will you try something new or will you go with a recipe which is designed by a chef, where you know what ingredients you need, right? So sometimes what happens is when there are frameworks designed or standards designed, they are supposed to provide you guidance on how to conduct this impact assessment. Similarly, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India have framed this particular social impact assessment framework, which defines and describes the elements and objectives of social impact assessment. It also gives you the guidance on how the report is to be prepared. So it provides a frame of reference for both the social impact assessors, the responsible party, the engaging party, and the intended users. So it does not cover any financial audit review, but it's only relating to the social audit. And while this is not mandatory for any all the non-profits, it's mandatory for those which are listed on the social stock exchange. So they've also devised some thematic social audit standards depending upon which area of intervention that you are intervening in. So it provides transparency, accountability, and ethical practice for this nonprofit sector. They can demonstrate their commitment and enhance their credibility by adhering to these standards. So here are listed a few of the standards that have been devised already. There are 16, but here, like suppose SAS 100 is on hunger, 200 is on healthcare, 300 is on education, and so on. So now what we are going to do is we are just going to take a case study which deals with gender equality. And through this standard, we will be able to see what are the elements involved in this, in the impact assessment. So I'll just share the case study with you all. I hope everybody can see it now. So this is a case study on promoting gender equality and empowerment of women. It is about a profit social enterprise, Achala, which works for women empowerment in the state of Madhya Pradesh. And it focuses on traditional talent and to produce local handicraft and handloom products. So this particular business model is for aims to provide employment opportunities to over 35,000 women over 3 years, set up shops in different cities under the brand name Craft Culture, and provide their members with forward and backward linkages, capacity building, market support, and quality control. Now, over a period of 8 years, the organization has invested about 1.25 crores. So first we have the introduction, wherein we state what is the objective and the scope. So first we are giving a background about the state. Madhya Pradesh is a hub for a variety of fabrics, handloom, handicraft products. So Achala has made use of this and has reached out in over 900 villages to give livelihood support to 35,000 women. So it's an income generating model, and it's empowering them both socially and financially by developing 2 types of products. We have handicraft and handlooms, and also helps them get fair prices for their talent and hard work. Now, how will you evaluate the social impact? Firstly, as we said, we are going to collect data. Data from whom? From the stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders in this case? The direct beneficiaries, that is the rural women, the employees of Achala, the families of these rural women, the NGOs, the investors, and the customers of the products produced by Craft Culture. Now, what are the tools that we will employ? We will do interviews, questionnaires. Since they don't have an in-house expertise and don't have the resources to do this impact assessment, they will engage with an external agency. And the data collection tools and actual data analysis, and they will submit a final report at the end of it. They're saying that the sample size is going to be 10%, which will be chosen from both the categories of products, the handloom as well as the handicraft. Focus group discussions will be held and interviews will be done of the rest of the stakeholders as well. Okay. So now, firstly, before we go on to the in-depth direct data collection, the primary data collection, we have to do a secondary data review, which is called the desk review, which is a review of the existing documents. So here they are looking at the national policy of women empowerment. So what is the nation's goal towards women empowerment? So we get to see whether the intervention is aligned with national goals, the government schemes that are in place for women empowerment and rural livelihood. Look at the annual reports of Achala, the data maintained on the craft culture shops, photographs, the family income details, and various case studies that may have been captured throughout these years. Now for inspection and personal interviews, now we go for the primary data collection. You visit the rural women to understand how they function, how is the training being conducted, focus group discussions are held, personal interviews are held. So here's a list of evaluation questions for this. So first you understand what is the composition of beneficiaries, what is the age group, social background, what are the traditional arts that they're looking at. In terms of quality of the project, we will look, are the women satisfied with the operations of Achala? Are the women satisfied with the resources, the training and the support that they have been provided with? Are the women getting fair prices for their products? Are the customers happy with the quality and pricing and service provided by Achala? Now, in terms of impact, firstly, we'll see how many rural women received sustainable livelihood. Has there been an increase in productive resources, increase in annual income? Has it changed their social status and the standard of living? Is there a change in the employment opportunities and social issues? So what are the suggestions that the assessor can come up with? So when they are reviewing, you will look at the pluses as well as the minuses. So when you see that there have been some challenges. So what are the kind of challenges faced by the rural women? What are the challenges faced by the Achala staff? And what are the suggestions provided by the customers? Now, looking at all these challenges, the assessor will be able to give an informed and an unbiased opinion to the NGO so that they can improve their operations. And are the expectations of the rural women being met through this program? Now, the key metrics for evaluation of the program are very important because they need to be identified at the baseline and the baseline itself. So when you do a need assessment, you will identify what is the demand for the handloom products, what is the willingness of these women to kind of start an activity like this, and are there enough resources to run this program? So look at the demography, look at the financial, social background. In rural areas, it is also very important to look at factors like caste, the religious background, the willingness of the women. In terms of outreach, as we said, we have to see how many women were reached, what skill sets they have acquired, the villages, the areas, the products, right? So all these quantitative and qualitative factors need to be looked at when you're doing the impact assessment. Now, after the assessment, we have come across these findings. That is the quantitative criteria which we have found is that 35,000 women have participated, 32 handloom products and 44 handicraft products were introduced. So many women attended skill development, packaging and branding. So many women attended financial literacy and business development. So there was an increase in family income, standard of living improved, employment opportunities were given. They have their own savings now, so they can think of how they can spend those savings. So there is an increase in the sale of craft culture products. What is the quality improvement? What is customer satisfaction level? In terms of qualitative criteria, you can see that there is an improvement in the living conditions. They have confidence. They have self-esteem. Now they have the money in their hand. They're able to make decisions. Earlier, they would be dependent on the patriarch of the family to even spend some money for their children's education. But now they can think for themselves and be financially independent and help to build the family and social culture. Right? So there is improved awareness about these skills, and there are new employment opportunities even for women and men because of these women, the transport, the raw material, supplies, all these peripheral aspects also get developed in the village. So, so as we also talked about the positives, there have been certain challenges. Now, what could have been the challenges or the area of improvement? Sometimes these women might find it difficult to understand the market trends and what are the production requirements. There might be lack of family support. They may not be able to maintain the quality and design because it is all individually done. It's not like a factory line where everybody is doing a different task. So they might not be aware of the financial and operational management that is required because they might not have the educational qualifications. So they have to learn a lot in this to kind of come up to speed and be an entrepreneur in their own right? And plus they might have competition from other brands in the handloom and handicraft projects. So the limitation in this project could be getting quantitative data from illiterate women participants and capturing data based on the behavioral changes. So I think through this case study, we have kind of tackled these questions which were raised about livelihood programs and the key aspects relating to outcome and tools. I think those queries have got resolved. Similarly, how to measure the outcome and output. Okay. So now, what are the different modes of implementing impact assessment? So for anybody who is mandatorily required to do impact assessment, it can be done by any independent agency. And which independent agency? The board will decide on the criteria, eligibility criteria for choosing an impact assessment agency. But for social enterprises who raise funds through the social stock exchange, a social auditor who has been certified by the National Institute of Securities Market and who has one of the following qualifications can do the social impact assessment. So it can be either a chartered accountant, a company secretary, a cost and management accountant, a postgraduate from any recognized university with minimum 3 years in the development sector, a graduate from universities with, again, 6 years in the development sector, and any other persons with suitable accreditation with minimum 6 years in the development sector. So this is what has been laid down for social enterprises who raise funds through the social stock exchange. Now, where you are not mandated to have do an impact assessment, you can still go through hiring an agency and using the outsourcing model. So these are the different types of models through which you can implement impact assessment. And why would you do that? Because it is a very time consuming and requires a lot of expertise. And if you want an unbiased and effective report, I think, and engaging with an external agency is very advisable, because even the organization may not have enough resources in terms of financial and human resources to handle such an exercise. Sometimes research organizations which are working in the same sector as yours can also help you, because they are also looking for live cases where they can explore certain policy questions, and you can bank upon their expertise of research and also leverage on their financing models. You can also have an fully integrated internal in-house department for assessment, wherein you do this impact assessment on a regular basis and not at the end of the project report and even a year after that, because this will help you to kind of systematize the report, the process, and identify the gaps and reduce inconsistencies. And NPO can also think of doing an impact assessment on a regular basis, because that will help them to see whether the impact that they really set out to achieve, they are achieving or not, and take actions faster and showcase their achievements to the funders. So here we'll just like to draw a quick reference to HDFC, where they have a unique system of implementing which mode they should go, whether internal or external, for conducting impact assessment. So they categorize their various implementing partners, whether they are critical or whether they have robust systems in place, and they also categorize their various interventions, whether there's a huge outlay or whether there's a smaller outlay, so the risk is lower. So depending on the risk and the criticality, you might choose on whether to go in-house or externally. In terms of expenditure for impact assessment, the amendment rules have clarified that the threshold for impact assessment is 50 lakh rupees or 2% of the CSR expenditure. Now, looking at this with an example, now suppose your expenditure is 100 crores, 2% of the CSR expenditure would be 2 crores. So the max permissible limit as expenditure for impact assessment would be the higher of 50 lakhs or 2 crores. So in this case, it would be 2 crores. Or if your expenditure is 10 crores, then 2% of the CSR expenditure will be 20 lakhs. So the maximum permissible limit for impact assessment would be the higher of 50 lakhs or 20 lakhs. So in this case, 50 lakhs. So this kind of increase in expenditure on impact assessment actually facilitates increased investment in this activity. And it ensures a more thorough evaluation and actually seeing that the societal contribution and outcomes are highlighted in the right way. So in case a company spends more than the permissible limit, it will not be considered as a deductible expenditure for tax purposes. Now, in terms of reporting of this impact assessment, you have this is the general reporting format in terms of executive summary, the scope, the stakeholder involvement. We'll go through this later in greater detail at a later point in time. And in terms of regulation, so the impact assessment report shall be placed before the board and shall be annexed to the report on CSR. Now, providing the executive summary in the annual report on CSR and sharing a web link for the detailed complete impact assessment report is considered permissible compliance. Now, in case 2 or more companies choose to collaborate for implementation, now this will happen when there are group companies and they want to kind of fund a particular area of intervention. They can come together, they can conduct the impact assessment, and the impact assessment carried out by one company can be shared with the other company for the purpose of disclosure to the board and in the annual report. Now, in terms of cost, the cost can also be shared by the companies, with subject to the limits which have been prescribed for each company under the Companies Act. So some organizations can also look at having annual impact reports instead of the one at the end of the program. And this will help them prepare a trend analysis to see how the impact has been achieved. Are the numbers dipping? Is the reach widening? That kind of thing. And it will also provide as a baseline and midline for successive years. So it is applicable for ongoing projects because it goes for over a year, and it helps you to introspect and alter its practices and also the project management skills. So if it's a positive trend, it will help you attract potential investments, whereas if the trend is negative, then you have to see why are you going, what are the causes for underachievement, and what can be done to reduce the adverse effects in future. Now, we look at a sample impact assessment report, and this report will kind of address some of your queries which had come before this webinar. That is, how to assess the impact across various stakeholders, how can data be represented, how to measure outcome and output, and how do we measure the intangible benefits and changes. So this report will kind of address those issues. So I'll just share the report. We've taken this report from the public domain, and it is only for representation purposes. Okay, can you all see my screen? Yeah. So we are starting with the executive summary over here. So firstly, we highlight the scope of the study and what all areas of intervention that they have engaged in. So as you can see in this table, the theme is mentioned. What is the overview of the project? The implementation mechanism. So we are looking at 2 projects. So they are doing it through an implementation partner. And in the contributing entities column, as you can see, there are various entities which are involved. So here is where group companies are coming together to kind of undertake an impact, an intervention. Okay. Then the methodology is mentioned, and the summary of key findings is also covered in the executive summary. Now let us look at the methodology for impact assessment. So firstly, you have the scope. So we are looking at 2 projects, and the scope states the boundary of the projects. First, you will conduct a desk review, stakeholder mapping, then develop quantitative and qualitative questionnaires. Meeting with the stakeholders is very important. Then you also draw an estimated quantitative sample for the survey, collect data, analyze this data, and develop the report. So these are the 2 projects that have been covered in this report. A detailed methodology is provided. Now you can see they provided an infographic over here. So you can present your data in such infographics so that it looks a little more appealing to the eye. So there are various work streams. The first is the engagement and kickoff, because the engagement partner, the assessor doesn't know about the implementation and the program as much as the implementation partner does. So he has to, the organization has to kind of understand what this whole review is, program is, by doing a preliminary review. So that's a very important aspect. Then you design your research and development tools. And in this case, also they've used the IREX framework, which we spoke about earlier, which is about inclusive, relevance, effectiveness, convergence, and sustainability. Then the sampling framework and the research methodology is mentioned over here, including the sample size. Then you do a field visit and data collection and analyze the report and write the report. Okay. So now we are going to look at one intervention which is dealing with the education sector, because I understand that was where majority of the audience works in. So the background of this intervention is during COVID pandemic. So now if I go scroll up, yeah, they're saying that as per UNICEF, 247 million children were affected by because they got out of school. Schools were shut and their access to education was blocked, right? So this is a kind of a secondary data which has been included in this report. And they're talking about rural India and already had existing challenges. Government schools were shut, there was a teacher shortage. So that's why this project has come into being. So here they've highlighted the objectives. The objectives are to lift the children from by giving them quality education, connecting them with multimedia content, so everybody can learn anywhere and anytime, and initiate grassroots level changes. Now, how are they going to achieve these objectives? By using multi-mode delivery of the program to digital schools, live classrooms, ready-to-consume content through television, etc. So the reach of the program is highlighted over here. 15,000 content modules were developed, apps were developed, so many schools, so many children were reached through television. So all those numericals are given over here. Now, as you see over here, the UNICEF, the secondary data source is also mentioned at the bottom, so that you are showing that your data has come from an external source. And you're talking about the implementing partner, the method of impact assessment. So these are the preliminary review documents we spoke about. You do this desk review, you form your methodology. They've identified a mixed methodology where numbers and qualitative research methodologies are merged. You identify who are the key stakeholders and you prepare tailored tools for each stakeholder, because the kind of engagement with them will be different. Sample size is mentioned. Here they're given the state-wise breakup of the samples. Okay. So now we have, now this infographic again over here is talking about how each stakeholder has been interacted with: students through focus group discussions, teachers through focus group discussions, the parents through in-depth interviews, and so on. Then after an on-site visit is done, then data is collected and quantitative survey and responses are collected. And these are the analysis and findings of this interaction. So what was the challenge before the project? That, as we said, because of COVID, they didn't have schools, schools were shut. And the profile of the respondents is also given in this pie chart over here. So you can use such pie charts in your report as well. And in terms of summary of impact created, they're saying access to quality education through online medium. Before they were doing traditional methods, and now they can access through multiple modes. Okay, and then we have enhanced learning experience. Now this is an outcome. Now, because of these research workbooks and everything is in vernacular languages, means in the languages of the rural villages. It is not in English or not in Hindi, but in something in which they locally speak. So that is very helpful. And in terms of, and it is also aligned to the state board. So they don't have to learn something which is apart from their regular curriculum. And there's a tabulation of data over here. They mentioned NA wherever it was not applicable or not relevant. Okay, and then what are the, obviously there are challenges at every program. So how have they resolved the challenges? That has been covered. So students were not able to hear. So there was this rotational seating arrangement which was introduced, or recorded classroom sessions so they could revise at home, that kind of thing. Then students did not have access to gadgets, so they were given laptops or they were given Wi-Fi dongles. Connectivity issues were handled. Improvement in learning. So this is again an outcome which is highlighted over here, that assessments were regularly carried out. So the lesson plans were helpful. You know, live classroom was very impactful in their learning. It developed their confidence. This is again a qualitative aspect which we've touched upon. Bringing about positive change in the students. They enjoy learning online. So they're now, because of their enjoying the learning process, their grades have gone up. Their fluency, math, science, everything has gone up. They're excited about participating in competitions. They're reduced in hesitation in asking questions to their teachers, because it's very easy and open. And there's an improvement in their academic performance, obviously. And now there's an intangible which has come through the parental interaction. So when they interact with the parents, we understood that the children's learning level is improved, self-confidence has gone up, the technological knowledge is also improved. Positive perception about different project aspects is shown in this tabulation, where 5 is the best and 1 is the least. So as you can see, they've fared pretty well across. Then synergizing stakeholder engagement and capacity building. Now through this project, they've even engaged with various stakeholders, and they've increased and built their capacity as well, like volunteer teachers, partner NGOs in the locality. class assistant, parents, everybody is involved. So it becomes like a synergy, beautiful synergy, and how they've involved and what is the impact that they have managed to create on their own. So again, the IREX analysis is shown in over here, and how inclusiveness, how, because it's in the rural areas, they're speaking in the local languages, so they're including more in their coverage. Relevance, because they're addressing the problems of schools being shut or teacher shortage. Education, where they're not able to reach to the most program is able to deliver that. And it's also a challenge of teacher shortage, because it's very difficult to find teachers in the rural areas. And it's also aligned to the UNSDG problem. There are some limitations, that is, they were not able to mobilize certain staff in 2 states, so the other states were considered for this purpose of study. In the case study, as we said, that they've said name change. Now, this is to protect the identity, as we spoke earlier. And if you're revealing the name of the participants, you have to take a consent, a written consent from them. So I think I hope that that report was useful for all of you in terms of understanding these various aspects of how an impact assessment report should kind of for design, flow, clarity. So many such reports are available on the public domain. Do have a look and kind of go through them, and you will get more insights into implementing your own impact assessment. So we can be reached out over here. Thank you so much for patiently listening to us. And yeah, over to you, Vinny.
Thank you so much, Preeti and Sarika, for taking us through that extremely insightful presentation, especially the last part where we covered the sample reports, right? So I think that was extremely helpful. There are some questions that have come in for the Q&A session, which is the last leg of this webinar. Some have been posted in the chat box and some were directed directly to me. So let's proceed with that. I'll take the first question that was submitted in the chat box, which is, how can NGOs balance donor prescribed indicators with their internal priorities and program specific outcomes?
And I think the whole focus here is engaging with your donors more frequently, because it is important that they feel invested in the project. They feel they understand. Otherwise, there is a certain expectation that they have, which is coming from their background, the resources that they are used to and take for granted. The challenges are very often not understood by the corporates or by the funders. So it is important to engage with the corporate. So as part of the memorandum of understanding, which is signed with the corporate, typically we will see clauses such as there will be interactions, there will be visits by they will have the right to visit the particular site, they will have the right to call for presentations to be done. I know it can be challenging for the non-profit to take out time from delivering the intervention to saying, okay, let's engage with the donor. But I think that's a very important aspect, because remember one thing, if the non-profit is delivering the activity and is bringing out the difference in the community that it is servicing, it is important that the funder also understands and appreciates. So if the funder has certain other indicators in mind which are not aligned to what your indicators are, a discussion across the table may actually result in you saying, okay, I need to take into account some of the indicators which the funder is very particular, I need to include. And probably there will be a little bit of give and take in terms of saying that, okay, the funder will also be more amenable and will appreciate what is being tracked and the way the intervention is being run by the operation team.
Thanks, Preeti. Is there anything that you would like to add, Sarika, to that?
Would you like to add something, Sarika?
Oh, no, I think you
Pretty
addressed
much covered. Okay. Moving on to the next question, which is how can NGOs tailor impact assessment frameworks to reflect the unique challenges and goals of their specific projects while still aligning with funder expectations?
I think a lot of the work for an impact assessment is in the design stage. So, so understanding what are the resources available with themselves, what are the restrictions which are presently there, uh, trying and seeing whether the non-profit can get the support from the funders in terms of whether it is, even helping them to design a simple software which can be used. Because very often the funders have all these means which non-profits are struggling for. So ensuring that getting those factors in, having those discussions, because it's like, it's like preparing for a final exam. You will start preparation much in advance, right? It's the impact assessment which happens is like, saying that after one whole year of studying, you are appearing for a final exam. Now you show me and get distinction. The preparation has to start from year at the start of the year, or in some cases, the start of 2 years. Like 2 years you will take to, depending on the life of the project. So all those factors need to be built in much in advance so that there are no unpleasant surprises, because all of us want to get a distinction at the end of the in the report, right?
Got it. Now, the next two questions are about the timeline and the cost. So, who bears the cost of this impact assessment assignment? And second question is, what is the timeline like?
So the cost, see, if the so where the corporate has invested more than 1 crore and is calling for an impact assessment to be done, they would be picking up the cost, because that is part of the allowable expenditure, right? The CSR allows them, the Companies Act allows them to spend. We saw that 2% or 50 lakhs. So that can be picked up by them. As far as those non-profits which are doing this at a periodic basis, well, then you will need to be able to convince your funder that please allow us to do this review and take up a certain part of this as part of your CSR. So, I know there are challenges in getting corporates to help in building the systems at nonprofits. But if we are able to convince at least those committed funders, I think it will go a long way in ensuring that the impact assessment, the mandatory impact assessment, does not reveal any surprises. So the cost typically picked up by the funder, and during the life of the project, if there is a spend, yes, it would be the non-profit, and hopefully the corporate will also be ready to spend a little for that.
Thanks, Preeti. Next question is, I know that it's already 4:15 and we were supposed to end the webinar, but I think we started 5 minutes late. So if it's okay with both of you and with the audience, can we just take a couple of more questions?
I think you had a question on the timeline also, right? What was
Yes.
that?
Yes. So what is the timeline for conducting the impact assessment?
So timeline, as far as the mandatory assessment is concerned, very clearly laid down rule that 1 year after the project is completed, the impact assessment is to be done. Very often you will find that there are constraints, one in terms of the fees that are being allocated, in terms of the timing of the impact assessment, reports wanted as of yesterday. So there is definitely, when you are working with all these restrictions, it will definitely tell on the quality of your impact assessment report. If the funder is really looking at doing a thorough impact assessment report, depending on what kind of project it is very, I say if it's a pan-India and they want actual visits to be done and all, yes, it could take about 2-3 months to be done.
So you,
Normally,
so
corporates will
chefs
not not
this, yeah.
give you the luxury of doing that.
I mean, see, we went through the emphasis report, right, which was so in detail. So normally you think that would such a report would take around 2-3 months to collate.
So the advantage here is, I would like to believe that a lot of groundwork has already been done. Because you can't do reports which are, it's not like a dipstick which is being done at the end of 1 year, right? So the preparation is all in place. All these measurements have all been done, because when you sit with the assessor and are able to demonstrate that, okay, these are the kind of questionnaires, and now you can use these questionnaires, maybe you want to tweak it. I think it gives them also that comfort, and you are able to get the results also faster. So I would say yes, about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, depending again on, like you saw, one of the challenges they faced was they were unable to visit certain states. So they had to restrict. So all these changes can happen depending on the situation on ground. So, while the engagement plan would have said that we will take a proper representation across all states, they would have had to curtail the actual sample for whatever reasons.
Got it. And since we were talking about the sample, there's one question about that. What is the minimum sample size to be considered for an ethical impact assessment?
Well, I would say about 10%, but again, depending on the complexity of your intervention, anywhere between 10 to 15% is acceptable. If you are doing below the 10%, it is for you to be able to have that discussion with the assessor. And the assessor would also appreciate, because one is the fees are a constraint. Remember, the larger the sample size, the time invested by the assessor and team would increase, unless a lot of it is being done through, say, is being done through the system, digital, discussions happening over call, where so many people are sitting and you say, okay, I was able to get the respondents, some 100 respondents to give me the responses. But if you're really looking at doing a detailed impact assessment, then yes, it definitely can take that much time.
Thanks, Preeti. One question that just came in was, when an NGO is trying to scale up its work, it has to project the potential of its campaigns, but relies on success at a smaller scale to convince donors. So measuring impact at a smaller scale to promise impact at a larger scale is challenging. Any advice on this?
Again, in terms of being able to demonstrate that there is a certain structure which is being followed, whether in terms of standardization of documentation. Corporates love to see that, where they see that there is a entire method and it's not just madness. So being able to demonstrate that, yes, we have policies, yes, we have committees within, we have clear responsibilities laid down, we have identification of risks, we have controls in place, we have proper reporting which is being done, we have a system which can track all the all the alerts, or the escalation mechanism has been put in place. If you are able to demonstrate that, a corporate who believes in the cause that you espouse would be ready to to invest their time and their money to help you scale up.
Thanks, Preeti. So now we've received two more organization-specific questions. The first one is about sports. So with sports being a unique cause, we want to highlight the impact in different ways rather than just scores and numbers of wins.
So what I understand is the non-profit, the activity, the intervention that is doing sports activity with.
Correct.
Okay, and they are saying that besides just the win, they want to demonstrate how they have been able to bring about a
Correct.
difference.
Correct.
Okay. I would say that as far as being able to show that difference is concerned, what is it that you will look at? There would be a lot of qualitative aspects to it. Whether in terms of improvement in the health parameters, because sports doesn't just happen, right? It's not just about training, it's about getting the right nutrition. So that is one of the aspects you would be able to tap in terms of being able to say what kind of health parameter changes are you able to demonstrate because of this intervention coming in. Again, if as far as just sports is concerned, with in terms of maybe some benefits, because a lot of the sports people are picked up by the PSUs. So I don't know, depending on the age bracket of these sportsmen, you would be able to also show employment that they have got, whether employed with the railways or any PSU. So that also becomes one of the aspects. I think, I don't know, as part of the earlier questions that you had received at the time of registration, Vinny, there was one question which was asked by one of the participants saying that they are in the area of housing, and how would they be able to demonstrate the effect that has happened as far as education, healthcare, and so on are concerned. My only submission is that since the particular intervention is in a community, uh, being able to demonstrate would require the nonprofit to take that proactive step, whether it is reaching out to, say, for example, if you're saying that I've come up with this housing here in this area, are there any other nonprofits who probably have a health as one of their focus areas? Would they be interested in coming to this area so that it becomes a win-win? Being able to showcase that yes, the people living in this area have taken the benefit of a health camp, or even saying that if there are some schools nearby, reaching out to those schools, establishing those connects. So I think one of the key factors is having these dialogues, having these, whether it is an informal relationship or whether it is some kind of formal relationship, but in ensuring that all, at least most of the requirements that a particular community have, if your intervention or your nonprofit is not doing it, are there other nonprofits who would be able to come in, or are there other agencies in that area where a dialogue can be started, so that when an impact assessment is being done after 1 year of the project, we are able to reach out to those agencies, we are able to reach out to the other nonprofits and asking them to help us validate the entire program by sharing some data, because these are only through connects and the network that you establish, you will be able to get this information, which will show the non-profit and the intervention in the right light.
Thanks for that. One last question is, how often do we have to conduct these impact assessment assignments, and should it always be project specific?
So the impact assessment is meant to be at a project level, but when it is done, so one is you may want to do an assessment. It won't be an impact assessment per se, but say for example, if you want to look at your, let's look at, say, the responsibility matrix across the various interventions. Now that could be something which could be taken up as an area of review. Are they clearly defined escalation mechanisms? Are there, so depending on the area, you could take up, you could engage an auditor, or you could engage, an internal department to do this kind of review, a very detailed process review, because all these factors will help you at the end to be able to demonstrate that the impact assessment reflects the work that has been done. So take all the means available to ensure that you are able to show the prospective funder the positive work that your nonprofit has brought about.
There was also a question about how often do they have to conduct these assessments?
So again, how often? If it's an in-house impact assessment which is being done, depending on the life cycle of that project itself, at least sometime early on, maybe somewhere near the mid term, an impact assessment, an annual impact assessment can be done. Whether by engaging with a third party or by doing it in-house, it will give you an idea of what needs to be corrected, or whether some things are working better than expected. So maybe the resources can then be diverted to another area. So it will just be an early alert, so that you don't have any unpleasant surprises at the end of the when the corporate is coming in for a mandatory impact assessment.
Like in the case of an education project, wherein you were kind of dealing with students and their cycle is an academic year. So if an impact assessment is done annually, you will automatically see the same student, how he is progressing from year on year, and how your project has been able to impact his or her life, through your various interventions, and what tweaks, identify what are the gaps. Maybe teachers need training, maybe it is the technology which is not working, or whether there are some family issues. So you will be able to identify whether it is a direct or systemic impact that needs to be put in place, so that you can actually achieve the impact that you've set out to achieve. So I think
those will be more in terms of the monitoring and evaluation, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, I think with that we've answered all of the questions that were submitted. And Preeti, Sarika, I think in a span of 60 minutes, we've covered a lot. So we've covered what impact assessment is, who are the key stakeholders, regulatory requirements, the process, data collection, analysis, framework, standards, best practices, and I think you've collated everything really well. Thank you so much. With this, I'd like to conclude the webinar, and in case we haven't been able to answer any questions that were submitted during the registration, or maybe in the chat box now, in case I've skipped anything, kindly send us an email on info@helpyourngo.com. Preeti, Sarika, once again, on behalf of Help Your NGO, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for taking the time to speak with us today. And your expertise and insights were incredibly valuable. We hope to have this opportunity to do this again with you. Also, thank you to all of the attendees for being such a wonderful audience. We will be posting the webinar video soon on YouTube, and we will be sharing it with everyone on email. So yeah, thanks once again, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so
for
much.
giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.